You know that sound, right? The deep, resonant toll of a massive cathedral bell, or maybe the bright chime from a small-town church. It's a sound that feels so simple, but at the same time, so profound. Well, behind that one sound is an incredible story of science, art, and history that's thousands of years in the making.
So, what does it actually take to turn a lump of metal into an instrument that can literally shape the sound of an entire city? That's the big question we're going to tackle today as we dive into the absolutely fascinating world of bell making.
And our journey begins with a pretty cool word, Campanology. It's the ancient art and science of making bells. And trust me, it's a craft that demands a super deep understanding of metal, acoustics, and just pure artistry. This is way more than manufacturing, it's a living tradition.
To really get a handle on the craft, we've got to start with the science. Think of this as the blueprint, the fundamental physics that every single bell founder has to master.
It really all boils down to this question. How in the world does a solid object create a sound that's so rich and complex and lingers in the air like that? Well, the answer isn't magic. It's all about a very careful balancing act of specific physical properties.
A bell founder is kind of like a master chef, right? They're working with 4 core ingredients: the bell's size, its very specific shape, the metal it's made from, and the precise spot where it gets struck. If you change just one of those things, you change the entire personality of the sound.
Okay, let's start with size. The relationship here is actually pretty intuitive. The larger and heavier a bell is, the slower it vibrates, and that's what gives us those deep, booming tones. On the flip side, smaller bells vibrate much faster, which creates those higher pitches. It's simple physics, but the acoustic result is just powerful. Now the shape? This is so far from being random. This very specific mix of a cylinder and a hemisphere isn't just for looks. Nope, it's acoustically perfect. This design, which has been fine-tuned over centuries, actually controls which overtones get amplified, making sure the bell gives you a clear, musical note instead of just a loud clang.
And of course, the material itself is absolutely critical. Bell makers almost always use a specific kind of bronze known as bell metal. It's a special recipe, an alloy that's roughly 3/4 copper and 1/4 tin. And that precise ratio is the secret sauce. The copper gives it resonance, but the tin makes the whole thing harder, letting it vibrate for a really long time without the sound dying out.
All right, so now that we've got the scientific blueprint down, let's explore the craft itself. We're going to shift from the what to the who and the when, the amazing human story behind this ancient tradition. You know, the desire to make these sounds is nothing new. We find the very first evidence of bells way back in ancient Mesopotamia, but it was really during the Middle Ages in Europe that bell making just exploded. These bell foundry guilds became some of the most respected and skilled craftsmen of their day, and it's a tradition that's still going strong.
The process is just a masterclass in working with metal. It all starts with forging and then casting, where they pour molten bronze into this incredibly detailed mold. But honestly, the real magic, the part that gives me goosebumps, is the tuning. They shave off tiny, tiny bits of metal to perfectly dial in the pitch. And finally, engraving gives each bell its own unique story.
So this brings us to the final, and you could argue the most important layer of our story. See, a bell isn't just a finely tuned machine for making sound. It's a piece of art, packed with deep cultural and emotional meaning. It really has a soul.
And this is the true challenge for a campanologist. They have to be both a scientist and an artist at the same time. On one hand, you've got to create a bell that's acoustically perfect and is going to last for centuries. But on the other hand, you're creating a cultural artifact, a piece of art that tells a story. It's a tough balancing act.
The engraving is the perfect example of this fusion. These aren't just random decorations. The intricate patterns, the symbols, the inscriptions, they transform the bell from just a functional object into a canvas that captures the history and the values of the community it's going to serve.
This quote really gets to the heart of it. Bells become so much more than their physical form. They actually become sacred objects. Their sound calls people together, it marks huge moments in their lives, and it creates this shared sense of identity, of community.
I mean, just think for a second about how the sound of a bell makes you feel. It can be incredibly calming, like a peaceful little marker of time passing, or it can be totally invigorating, a call to action or a huge celebration. It just has this unique power to connect us to something bigger than ourselves.
So let's bring all these different threads together.
What have we really learned about these incredible objects that literally echo through our history?
A bell, at its core, is a legacy built from 4 key parts. You've got the science of acoustics, the hands-on craft of metalworking passed down for generations, the art that allows for cultural expression, and finally, its role as a cultural anchor, a shared voice for an entire community.
So when you boil it all down, it comes back to this simple formula. It's the intersection of precise science, creative art, and deep, deep history that gives a bell its soul. That's what makes it so much more than just a noise.
And that's why all this matters. Because by understanding the incredible complexity behind what seems like a simple chime, we can start to hear the world just a little bit differently. We can gain a whole new appreciation for the sounds that define our spaces and mark the moments of our lives.
Which kind of leaves us with one last thought to chew on. The bell is a powerful, shaping sound for so many communities. But what about for you personally? What are the sounds that shape your world?